Oh,
Hi friends, welcome to this week's episode of Dead Funny University. I am your host and fellow student Kelsey. This week is our 5th episode in our Zelda semester, and to help us learn this week is Chris, the man who wishes that he could hold the Picori sword in real life. Actually, I'm curious, do you have any of your models and like action figures behind you, are any of them Zelda related?
I have a letter opener that is the Master Sword in the actual stone, and then I have a amiibo of Link. I want to get more Zelda stuff, but the Final Fantasy stuff is more important and a lot more expensive at the moment. So yeah. Speaking of, I just got a new Cloud in today. Super pumped about that.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
the last outfit I needed, so I have him in his Kingdom Hearts outfit now, which is the
So
one
you're
where he's got
done.
with
You've
his cape
officially
on. Vincent. No,
maxed out. You're not going to get any more statues. You're
I
done.
have a statue pre-ordered every month starting from now until March. Because this month they released Barrett. Next month is Tifa. The month after that is Aerith. The month after that is Reno. The month after that is Rude. And then the ending in March was Sephiroth. So they haven't released Red 13 yet. So I'm waiting on that one. So,
Which I'm sure will be April.
and then I also, proud father moment, ordered my daughter's first Final Fantasy VII collectibles. Her Final Fantasy collectibles. Well, I said 7, but it's just collectibles. But they actually look like baby dolls. Like they actually look like dolls for babies because like the material they're made out of. So I got a little chocobo, a little moogle, and those are going to be here tomorrow.
And are you going to be okay
So
with her vomiting on those, chewing on those,
they are
removing their
hers.
eyeballs? Okay.
They are hers. So all hers. So yep, proud father moment. I was like, this is what it feels like to be like when I hit checkout. I was like, this is what it feels like to be a proud father right here.
So not about her
Her
accomplishments.
Final Fantasy. Yep, not about her accomplishments. Unless she finishes a Final Fantasy game, then I'll be even more. I might even tear up. Honestly, I might even tear up. So that is my goal in life: is to get my daughter to fall in love with at least one of the Final Fantasies. It doesn't have to be 7. I'll be a little disappointed if it's not, but at least I like it. I would rather like it if she found one where she actually fell in love with the characters herself and liked that series for what it was versus, well, that's Daddy's game, you know. So I did the same thing. My dad's favorite game is 10. I did the same thing. I like 7 more than I like 10.
I am surprised that you would be willing to let her choose. I'm delighted. I mean, you should, because she's going to make her own choices. Not at age 1, but
I just got to get her into the series. That's going to be the big part. So
chocobo, everything.
Got to get her in. Yeah. Well, I'll go. We're good to go. We're good to go. But yeah, so I don't have too much Zelda stuff. I've always kind of wanted more, but like I said, it's just one expensive hobby at a time.
I mean, yeah.
Hobby at a time.
And from what I've heard, babies are also an expensive hobby.
Yeah, I mean, everybody I've talked to so far says that your first one really isn't that much of a difference in your finances. It's whenever you choose to have 2, and then 3 is whenever you start getting up there and like, holy shit, this is starting to trade the finances aspect. But the one that, besides the beginning years of, I mean, obviously it's gonna be different for me due to surgeries and shit, but everything else shouldn't be that bad. So, but I don't know. If I did Link, I think it would probably be something a little bit on a smaller scale than Final Fantasy. So I probably might go the amiibo route because there are a lot of really cool amiibos out there that I like of Link. They even have some old school pixelated looking ones to go off old school games too. Yeah. So I think that would probably be the route I would go with Link. Get like a full shelf of just Link amiibos. But other than that, yeah, I probably wouldn't go like, I mean, I don't even know if there are like big statues and stuff like that. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, Nintendo, in my opinion, has never been a big figure type situation. Like I've never really heard of like a company like Play Arts or who's the other one? Like Bandai and stuff like that. Actually, or McFarlane Toys, you know, like none of the big names in the business ever like doing something for Nintendo. So like I said, I don't think they have any big statues, but like I said, I'd probably just stick around the amiibo aspect. So
Okay. Interesting. Well, where are we starting today with the lore?
We are on somewhat of a little shorter episode because this game really doesn't have any story, which is funny because it's like one of my favorites. But this is probably arguably known as one of the more worst stories in Zelda, just due to like it seemed like it was kind of a phoned in one. But we
Oh
are going to be
no.
talking about Four Swords, the Four Swords. Now, to be fair, there is a slight confusion, so let me clear that up for some people.
I was about to ask.
Four Swords is going to take place after the Minish Cap, but there is also another game called Four Swords Adventures, and that comes way further down the timeline, like thousands of years later down the timeline. So there are two Four Swords games, one that's taking place now and one that's way down the timeline.
Now, is this the one that is multiplayer?
Yes, they
Got
both are.
it.
Both the Four Swords one.
Oh,
Yeah.
they both are. Okay,
Mhm.
interesting.
This
So,
one was multiplayer on the GameCube. The other one was multiplayer because it was a handheld game. So you could link up handheld wise locally off the same internet and be able to play together.
all right, which one's this?
This is the handheld
This is
one.
the handheld. Okay, that's what I figured, but I wanted to make
Yep.
sure that I was not making assumptions and then getting all of my facts wrong. Because when we do
Yep.
semesters, if I get something wrong at the beginning, it just has a snowball effect. And by the time we're done, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? It's not good for anybody.
Still
Okay,
think out of all your fuck ups on the DFUs I've been on so far, you mispronouncing Chocobo for the first time was pretty great
in
because you
my
did it like
defense.
6 times in a row. And I hadn't said Chocobo yet. You were just
Yep.
reading the world map, but that's what stuck out to you because there were so many Chocobo tracks all over the
Mm-hmm.
map. And you just kept doing it. And like, if you listen to the video, you can hear me going, Kelsey, 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 Kelsey. And you were just destined to just keep calling out every single one on the map that you saw. That was pretty funny.
I haven't checked the
Yeah.
video, but I should see whether or not you were physically like flinching every time I said it.
I was trying. I was like, Kelsey, Kelsey,
Please stop.
Kelsey, Kelsey, Kelsey. And then finally you stopped and I was like, it's pronounced Chocobo. That was a pretty good one. But yeah, so this will be the end of the Force era. And then next episode, and judging on how long it takes us to get through that, possibly next 2 episodes, we'll be going through my favorite game, Ocarina of Time, which I'm pretty excited about. So, but yeah.
All right, let's
So
start.
to close out the Force era, we're going to be talking about Four Swords. But before we do that, I'm going to play a little bit of a music clip here for Kelsey because I know some of you have talked to me, whether it was in stream or Discord, because you've been watching, and it's like, if you don't start telling Kelsey about the music, we're going to get upset. So, Zelda is another musical game. The reason why is because we kind of talked about it before, but there is an actual ocarina, and I'm gonna save a lot more of the ocarina songs for one, Ocarina of Time, and then two, Majora's Mask, because that's where a lot more of that comes into play. In the early on games, you didn't actually really have a musical instrument that you were playing,
Mhm.
including this one as well. So you didn't really have a musical instrument you're playing, but in those you do, and what's even cooler is that in Majora's Mask. There's a thing that happens that lets you transform into different species. And we'll talk about that when we get there. But you also get to play the actual preferred instrument of that species,
Oh,
which is also
neat.
cool. So it transforms your instrument as well.
So each species has their own instrument.
Yeah, like the Zora, I think, was a guitar. Goron was a drum. And I am completely drawing a blank on what the Deku like, but we'll get there when we get there. But
Okay.
yeah, and then obviously Link had the fucking ocarina. But yeah, so pretty cool. But anyways, so basically what I'm gonna play for you here is the tried and true Legend of Zelda theme. This is the main theme that's been in every single game and still goes on. Whenever people hear this song, they fucking love it. They know what they're getting into. So we're gonna play a small little clip of that, nothing too crazy. But yeah, this is the actual main theme to the game that you are learning. Pretty good for a theme. It's pretty good. Okay. So nothing too crazy. Just your average like theme, but it is pretty good. And it's What's actually more interesting is if you kind of go back and listen to the evolution of it. It's really, really cool. Since this game has some fucking cool titles. But yeah, so that's the main theme to Legend of Zelda. Just really repetitive, just keeps going on that round. But they play that whenever you start up the game. There's times whenever you're in the game, like in Hyrule Castle and stuff, and they'll have that playing and stuff like that. It's the tried and true theme. Everybody fucking loves it. That's all you get for this episode, viewers at home. I told you, we'll wait till Ocarina of Time for the rest of it.
And
All
in
right.
case any of you want to start screaming at Chris for talking, we will get like flagged for hearing that music, and so he has
Yeah.
to talk over some of it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to have any of it in the video at all. So,
Exactly.
nobody yell at him. It was strategic and intentional, so you could hear some of it. Be happy.
Yes. So it's those copyright stuff. Anyways, so moving on. So we're gonna be, like I said, moving into Four Swords here. My favorite out of the handhelds for sure. I've never been a big fan of handheld games to begin with, but obviously that's pretty much the only reason why I buy Nintendo at this point anymore is for Zelda and Smash Bros. So yeah. But
Which
anyways,
is
so
your
we're
love.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Zelda is literally the only fucking title I care about on the Nintendo besides Smash Bros. So we got Four Swords. There's a nice little cover for you, what the cover of the game looks like. So basically, like I said, this story is going to take place after Minish Cap. So what happened at the end of Minish Cap was that we beat Vati and we sealed him away within the Four Sword. We then put the Four Sword in the pedestal, and there was a seal put on it, and that's where we left. Well, years later, or years and years and years later, the seal gets weaker and weaker and weaker as time goes on, and Vati ends up breaking out. So he breaks out of the seal, does not remember his life as a Picori whatsoever. So his memory is basically gone to him. All he knows is that he now has this strange magic to be able to, or power, I guess you should say, to be able to control the wind. But also with the fact of losing his memory to the fact of being a Picori, he also doesn't have the same lust for the light force either.
Oh,
So,
interesting. So he's kind of
yep.
traded out, I mean, even core pieces of his personality.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
So he breaks out and he takes over the Wind Palace, which we'll get to that in a second. Which I mean, I guess I can kind of go ahead and upload the world map here for you to kind of give you a little bit of visual to look at.
That would be
But
fabulous.
so he breaks up or breaks out and then takes over. Actually, I don't think he takes over the Wind Palace yet. But what you can see there on the map is the Lake of Trees, I think it was called, was the forest realm. Then there's the ice realm, and then the fire realm, and then the Wind Palace you can see up there to the right. Like I said, not a very big game whatsoever. And a lot of this stuff that I'm telling you right now actually isn't even playable game. It's actually the lore that comes before you start the game.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
How does the
Like I
character
said, pretty
learn this
short.
lore? Is it revealed over the course of the game? Is it in a little,
No,
like, scrolling screen at the very beginning? Is this just
exactly.
okay?
Yep, scrolling screen at the very beginning. So yeah, it is the Sea of Trees, the Tullus Cave, which is the Icelands, and then Death Mountain. So that's pretty much stayed the same throughout all lore. That's where the Gorons live, Death Mountain. It's pretty
See,
much
I
the same
wonder
throughout.
every now and then why Flatlanders, I come from a place of mountains, and I was speaking to a bunch of people that are from like the Midwest and from just flat areas, and they're like, when we get around mountains, we're just terrified of them. And I'm like, why are you scared of mountains? Like, what is
Mm,
this for you? This doesn't make any sense to me. And two things. A, they say it feels claustrophobic to have to land over them. And to me, it feels like really like exposed to not have land that can hide you or you can hide behind. So it's just one
yep.
of those growing up things. And then every time mountains are mentioned in popular nerd culture, they're always negative. You've got Mount Doom, you've got Death Mountain, you've got like there's literature and games are just littered with these mountains that are absolutely just horrible bad places and I'm like, guys, mountains are awesome. Maybe it's
That's fair.
a marketing campaign to keep people away from the mountains so that way they stay unobliterated by bad tourists. Never mind. Mountains are awful. Mountains are full of death. Don't go there.
It's where they hid all the bad Atari games like ET. They're all hidden in the mountains. So they're kind of Trying to keep that secret because no one's found them. And every time a bad game comes out, that's where it goes. They're like, oh, well, this one didn't do. I'll take it off the shelves. It never existed. Hey, did you see that one game we talking about? Mandela Effect. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I
it
want
never
to
came
check
out.
it. Yeah, never happened. Anyways, so yeah, he then decides that he's going to go around and kidnap every beautiful woman in Hyrule. All of
Excuse me?
them. Yep. He kidnaps every beautiful woman in Hyrule.
Why?
And then finally, it just, I guess, to make them all his wives is my only guess on this one. Because his motive seems more clear the second time he goes through this than the first time. Because it just seems like he didn't really know what the fuck was going on, didn't really know who he was. He was just free and had this power. And was like, I'm just gonna do me. So
I hate Vati.
that leads up to one night where finally the villagers got tired of it and sent a group of warriors up to go uh, confront Vati, and they were never heard from again until one day a mysterious young man showed up with sword in hand and heard the stories and decided to go confront the wizard himself. Then once again sealing away Vati in the four sword and putting the seal or putting him back into the seal and putting the sword back into the pedestal. They didn't really know who the boy was, but they did hear stories from the women about how when he used the sword, it split him into four different people. Therefore, they are the ones that created the lore of the four sword and called it the four sword. End of the game, right? No, that was all the beginning. So now the family or the Hylian family, which is basically the royal family, has been, watching over the Four Sword this entire time, and it has been passed down through generation through generation through generation of Zelda to make sure that this sword is kept okay. Well, one day she feels that there's something wrong and decides to go and takes the one person that she trusts with her, which would be our good pal Link.
Hey.
So here is the beautiful Zelda in this game. She somewhat looks a little different in each game. And then she ends up taking Link with her to go check out on the sword, which this is kind of like the opener screen for the sword. It doesn't actually really have that bandage on it in the actual game or
Mm.
the Triforce little gem there. But anyways, so they go check on the sword and see how the seal is doing. They get there and immediately Vati breaks free and grabs Zelda and carries her off to the Wind Temple to become his wife. Like I said, motive seemed a little bit more clear this time. Now, a reason why I said this game is very short and why it seems pretty phoned in is because this sounds like basically a Zelda version of Mario at this point.
Yeah, it really does.
Just a little bit. And it's the only game that really diverts from a lot of the really good storytelling, in my opinion. And I think the reason why I like this game so much and why it held a lot to me was because of the multiplayer aspect. It
Yeah,
was
the
the
memories
first
you made.
time Yeah, it was the first time that as a Zelda fan, I got to play with like my brother and friends and actually play a multiplayer version of Zelda. So that's where I think this game became so big for me.
Mhm.
So the fairies, these three great fairies end up showing up, and they actually don't have names. There's just a great fairy of the forest, great fairy of the flame, and great fairy of the ice. Show up and tell Link to pull the sword. They tell Link to pull the sword. He then picks up the sword, which for the first time not only transforms him into four different Links, but the four different colors. Which what's cool about this is that we remember Link used the four sword in the Minish Cap. But what happened in there was that it made three spectral versions of Link, if you will. And
Mhm.
it was mainly more to help him open doors and stuff like that, more like, to get around puzzles and stuff versus actually using it the way this game does, to where there are four separate Links, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
So you can see the three little fairies up top there. As I said, he pulls a sword. The four Links come out, each one of the swords having their own little pendant at the bottom, resembling the Link that wields it, which was awesome as well. And a pretty cool little touch on the swords themselves. So yeah, the reason why this game is even more shorter is because it had kind of like that multiplayer fun to it. So it was like the fairies like, we can take you to the Wind Palace, but to do that, you have to prove your courage by going to each one of the areas that we protect and defeating the evil that's there and collect rupees. The
Great.
rupees was just for the multiplayer aspect of it. So it was like at
Mhm.
the end of the temple, it would do like a whole pedestal thing, and whoever had the most rupees would be in first, and then second, then third, and then fourth, and then one that was in fourth place, the Link would be like laying on his back, like whining and crying and stuff like that.
This
So
sounds
it was more
very
of the,
Mario.
yeah, it was definitely more for the fun aspect. But yeah, so just like last time with Minish Cap, since we got the kind of cartoony Link, I did grab us a couple cool little pictures here for us to look at as the four swords go. Like I said, we got a couple cool ones, and we got a couple of Link getting up to his normal shenanigans here. But yeah, like I said, it was a fun game because you got to do like all these different colored links, and like I said, play with your friends, which was a lot of fun. Figured you'd like this one a lot. Right here with
Yeah,
good old red link
I
lighting Green Link's ass on fire,
I really do like that one, that's great.
and then them scrambling for rupees.
That's
So
fantastic. How
yeah, like I
fun.
said, yeah, definitely a lot of fun. So you go to the different regions. I don't even remember. The monsters weren't even really rememberable at all. Like I said, this one was really phoned in, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But yeah, so you had the different monsters that you had to fight at each one. It's like I said, three total areas. Didn't take long at all. But basically, you get that, you go back to the fairies, and as you saw in the pictures, they each had a key in their hand. They give you their keys, and you take that. Now you're off to the Wind Temple to go fight Vati. You show up, and the whole big battle goes to happen with Vati. You end up killing Vati. Well, not killing, but sealing him away in the Four Sword once and for all again, until thousands and thousands and thousands of years later when we hit Four Swords Adventures. So that is the end of the game. But since this episode is so short, something that I would like to touch on Four Sword Adventures, which we won't go too deep into that game. So that I would like to touch on Four Sword Adventures, which I think will be fun to do after I tell you about that game, is that there's actually a lot of controversy on where Nintendo put that game at in the timeline,
Oh,
because
really?
in our timeline, it's underneath the childhood version. So it's whenever in Ocarina of Time, where I told you that Zelda chooses to let Link go back to his child form and live out his life. So it's underneath the childhood tree. And it makes sense because of the whole childhood aspect with the four sword. It makes sense altogether because the sword is kind of a very small sword to adult Link. That would be more of almost a fucking dagger at that point. It would be
Mhm.
so much of a sword to him. And so the cool part is that there's actually quote unquote what some people consider the first appearance of Ganon in there.
Oh, really?
So a lot of people believe that because of the way that it involves the Four Sword and Vati, that it's supposed to go directly after Four Sword. It's supposed to go Four Sword, then Four Sword Adventures,
Mhm.
because the timeline matches up. But what breaks that timeline is Ganon. And why it breaks that timeline is because if Ganon existed, then in Ocarina of Time, the only reason he got as close as he did to the family was because they viewed him as a strong ally, which we'll get more into whenever we get there.
Mhm.
So they viewed him as a strong ally. But if he already existed, then his name would be completely tarnished because the family would remember that and pass that down for generations, generations, generations through folklore. So
Yeah.
that's where it breaks that. So then it goes back down. But what's interesting is that the left timeline, which I believe is that if the hero dies and Ganon wins, I think is that timeline. I think it's the dark timeline. Is every single game that's ever had the blue skinned hog face trident holding Ganon,
Mhm.
besides this one, which is the one timeline over. So if this game actually belongs over there due to the continuity of Ganon, it would be every single Ganon of that kind would be in that timeline versus this one being a miss. So this is what a lot of people refer to as the black sheep of the timeline. A
It
lot of people don't think Nintendo actually got it correct where they put it. that they just were like,
Oh.
fuck it, we're gonna throw it here because it's literally all the way at the bottom of the kid timeline. It's like, fuck it, put it down
Hmm.
there.
So is it possible that they intended one thing and then in the process of development it just kind of got away from them and then they were like, "Oh shit. Like we intended it to be here and we didn't kind of think all the way through it." Is that possible?
Well, since this whole timeline spiel thing didn't actually come out until I think like 2007, I think is when this Historia was created.
Mhm.
Because that's the first time we actually got an actual timeline from them. Uh, I mean, going forward, being able to keep all this together is going to be very interesting to see how that happens. Yeah, because they even call it the reincarnation of Ganondorf and the resurrection of Vati.
Do you
So
think at some point they'll they'll do what the MCU and the not the MCU, excuse me, but technically, but Marvel and DC have done where they're just like, and this is gonna end everything, and this is gonna restart, and we're gonna launch the universe again. Do you think they'll ever do something like that?
I don't think so. I think they've put way too much time in, especially recently with trying to make additions to the timeline that they're really trying to build because that would really destroy the title of Link being the hero of time.
Hmm.
Because now you're going to be trying to sell the hero of time who is now starting all the way from scratch again to a newer audience that has nothing to do with that whole series whatsoever. That would be like my
Mm,
daughter picking up the newest Legend of Zelda and it not meaning anything to her versus her picking up whatever the newest one is out and me being like, yeah, that actually belongs here. And all these other games tell this long story that actually gets you to that. And then her going back and playing what she could of each one of those games. Versus it's like if it was a new one, there would be no point in me telling her that. I'd be like, oh yeah, well there is the Legend of Zelda like timeline that existed back whenever Daddy was playing these games, but it doesn't really relate to this one versus what you're playing at all. So you going back and playing it would just be more of the fact of you getting to know that timeline, but it's not going to exist with anything that's going to be coming out future wise with the graphics that you're going to like and the graphics that you're going to be used to. So is it actually going to be useful to you? Probably not. That
so
would be like
you're
her wanting
go
to
ahead.
play like Final Fantasy 18 and me being like, "Oh, you need to go play 1." They don't line up. That's not how that works.
You're suggesting that they've built too much into the lore and into the community is so invested in the lore that to separate it
Mhm.
would actually be meaningless and be like shooting themselves in the foot.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Like I said, at this point, I'm pretty sure I know it's in the 20s and I want to say 27. I think there's 27 total Zelda timelines or Zelda titles at this point.
Ha 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 ha!
So if they
Dang.
stuck with it for that long, it seems like it would be pretty dumb for them to be like, let's watch. Because no one's losing interest.
Hmm.
Zelda is still the juggernaut that comes out every couple of years for Nintendo. It is a reason why a lot of their systems are still being sold is for people who are Zelda fans. And they're not having any issues getting younger audiences to play it now.
Hmm.
So there's no point for the revamp besides adding small little different things. And with the way Breath of the Wild was being the first open world Zelda where you can switch out through multiple different weapons, you didn't have to always just use the Master Sword or the short little corkery sword that you get at the beginning of the game. Until you get
Yeah.
the Master Sword, you got to pick up like wooden clubs and shit and all kinds of stuff like that. Your armor and stuff would break. Well, not your armor, but your fucking weapons and stuff would break. Your shields and stuff would break. Like there was so much to that game that just drew everybody to it. And now that we're actually going to be getting an actual sequel for once, I don't see them deviating from that timeline at all. It just
Okay.
wouldn't make sense in my opinion.
Hmm. Interesting. All right. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to put into this episode?
No, I think that about covers it. Like I said, a little bit of a shorter episode, but it will definitely be made up in the next one, that's for sure.
Well, that's going to do it for our fifth class on Zelda. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Turn on the notifications so you know when to come to class. As always, it's very helpful if you let people know that we're doing this. Send it to your friends that have always wanted to play Zelda but wasn't sure, do I have to start with the very first one? How does it work? Feel free to just send them these episodes and they can join our community as well and we can talk to them and they can learn and you guys can interact with them afterwards. And please come and interact with us in the comments below. Chris and I read them. We love them, and we love interacting with you in that space. There's also our Twitter or our Twitch links, which are available for you for our entire team as well. And we will see you in the next class of Dead Funny University. Bye, friends.